Alright, so I did a little bit of fiddling and I could not acquire a daytime, oh man, that looks rough, oh well, a daytime launch window, but I did fiddle with ambient light adjustment. Let's see, there we go. I kind of wish you could set it different in this view versus the other one, but because the nighttime side looks so nice normally, but I mean, I want my launch to be visible, so there we go. Crank it up for that, and perform a nighttime launch. So I created a clean save file for this, so I've got the 3 original guys, and I'm just going to do a quick launch so I can get it into orbit in a reasonable time. If you want to see, hear a bit more of the detail of kind of how I'm working my trajectory, you can watch the previous video, but here, you're just going to get to see a clean trip to orbit with some time warp. Only minimal commentary. Okay, so I've got past 50 meters per second, so starting to pitch over, and there we go. I usually wait till about a minute, but here we're already getting to half the speed of sound, so let's go to surface velocity vector and pitch over, starting to pitch. Set my roll so that the boosters will kind of fall off to the sides relative to my trajectory. I'm in the plane of the moon now, set as target, see? Pretty decent. I won't fiddle with that too much till I'm on my next stage, because you've got so much thrust on this stage. As long as you don't wander like terribly far away, more than a degree or two, you should be able to correct it with the next stages. Alright, so already past max Q, getting ready for this stage burnout. I'm still above 50 degrees. Oh, wow, and I let it wander too far off that way. 2 degrees off, but still fine. It's still good, it's still good. Okay. Pitch down a bit. Actually, maybe a bit too low. Maybe I'll just stay angled up like this even once my orbital velocity vector heads down a bit. Because right now I'm approaching an AP of maybe 180 at burnout. Whereas I wanted to be closer to 200, 230 maybe. Okay, so those are burned out. Drop them off. Jettison the escape tower. It seems about 80 kilometers the clouds just disappear. I don't know if that's a memory issue or a setting I have with with Eve RVE, but yeah, it doesn't bother me that much. I found just Eve RVE was a little less stable for me in 1.05 versus 1.04, but since everybody's hoping and waiting for the 1.1 release, not a ton of work is being done on a lot of some certain mods, so it's okay. It's just a quieter period, so I just live without this with this issue, because got to pick my battles. Oh, the clouds didn't come back at 130. I wonder if that's just because of the memory. Well, or maybe is it ambient light occlusion, or because I'm at night? So you see all kinds of weird shapes. There we go. And that's because I'm running OpenGL. It doesn't do that if I have DirectX 11 forced, but really to have all these things going at the same time and still not crash, I can't be running DirectX 11. Usually I do play with DirectX 11 since a number of weird little glitches and bugs were fixed with it. There weren't really any huge glitches. It's just with certain mods it'd be like ocean is purple, etc. So to avoid that, I was running an OpenGL until Nathan Kell told me that he was no longer having trouble with it, so it seems to be good. 250. Oh yeah, so now I'm going to end up arcing a bit higher. That's always the case, right? You need to be wary you don't just overcorrect. So pitch down a little bit. Let's see, what is my pitch? Yeah, I may as well just do auto management of this. Let's see, pitch of, let's give it 6, and I'll just fiddle a little with the heading in this. So I just like this control. I'd use the smart ass control for all of my orbit stuff if I could click faster without it losing my target. Now that may not be a problem on the Mac or Linux versions, I'm not sure, but it definitely is in Windows. I remember having some weird issues when I briefly tried a Linux install to make use of the 64-bit memory space, but your experience may differ. I just didn't find it was worth the having an entirely different OS installed. But yes, experience may vary on that front. Really depends how comfortable you are with Linux and how much other stuff you use, whether that's worth it for you or not. So I'm just trying to bring down my relative inclination a little bit. Don't want to add too much altitude to where I am now, because 260 is already a bit high. Unfortunately, it might not be a better launch than my last one, so I might toss this video in the bin too, particularly since the clouds disappeared. And the craziness is even more crazy than usual, which is a shame. Of the, I think that's the scatterer. What do they call it? Extinction. Alt F11 for the scatterer menu. The extinction just looks crazy. I find that's an issue with OpenGL, but not DX11. In my experience, if you know a way to make the coloring of the extinction multiplier and the edge not look crazy in OpenGL, let me know. This is as good a place as any to trade information, because I have looked and looked on the forum a number of times, just not found any real information about that. So I just live with the weird little glitches like that. If you use scatter in RSS, one trick might be useful. Alt F11. So map view scale is a trick. So if you set, that's when you lose the cloud. It just becomes this tiny ball at the center of the planet. And at 10650, around there, you get it the size of the Earth. If I set it, I guess you can't really make it crazy big, but you see if you make it a little too big, it becomes a little too big. Right, you're manually scaling it to the size of the Earth in doing that. All right. Oh, and now I'm heading downhill, so I need to have my relative inclination 0.78. It's not getting any better. It's not getting any worse. Okay. Let's do this manually. Sometimes MechJeb is a little too cautious, so it was slowly pitching, but I want to quickly get up here because I don't want to lose more altitude, because I've only got 2 minutes to correct for this. But like the altitude you select for this is where you're going to burn most of your fuel, like huge amounts of your mass, more than half, maybe 2/3 of your overall craft mass. So you need to pick this altitude kind of carefully and manage yourself to get to it. Because if you do it too high like I am now, you're just not going to have enough delta V for, you're going to reduce how much delta V you have to do whatever burn, whether you're going for geosynchronous or whether you're burning for the moon or Mars. And I find with this specific craft, because of the low thrust-to-weight ratio nature of some of the stages, I need a little more pitch. A little risky to pitch when you're at this kind of physical acceleration, but hey, it works. Because of the low thrust-to-weight nature, I can't aim for 180 kilometer, which is what I generally aim for with the Saturn V. So 130 is where the atmosphere starts, and 180 gives you plenty of leeway for above that 130, I find. Alright, so getting time to AP over a minute, like I did before. That's good. You can actually see the craft this time, I hope. I certainly can. There we go, and we're going to get burnout. And then my favorite part of this launch, staging. And then these extendable engines, lovely ones that come with SSTU, extend out, and I can drop the interstage. As long as I don't pitch around the engines, the ring does not hit the engines. Sure is nice. They're just really nice engines. SSTU, they're very nicely modeled. Alright, so we're pitched up. So time to AP is coming down because we've got next to nothing for thrust-to-weight ratio. So tons of time. Yeah, we're gaining huge amounts of altitude. What a shame. Oh well. Not going to get to orbit again. Well, not with enough energy to do a good TLI, but yeah, I might try it anyway and just fix with HyperEdit where I need to. Come on. I've only had one launch with this craft where I had enough fuel left, and of course it was the most meaningless test, not recording, not anything, which always seems to be the case when it fails. So jettison side panels. Start turning liquid oxygen into oxygen for breathing for these guys, and turn on their scrubbers so their life support resources are going to last them out to the moon. Oxygen remaining is a little, and electricity remaining is just kind of broken in this right now. Oxygen remaining also lies a little bit because it isn't, whatever runs these numbers isn't aware that I'm turning liquid oxygen into breathing oxygen. Alright, so we hit AP at 270 kilometers. Alright, another minute or so to orbit. So now we're falling a little bit. We're down minus 30 meters per second. Don't want to be dropping this fast, so let's increase the pitch a bit. A bit. There we go. It's still falling more and more, but there we go. Leveled off. In one respect, velocity, vertical speed is no longer getting more negative. It is now getting more positive with time. Minus 50 vertical speed, meters per second. Getting closer to orbit. Yeah, I like the higher thrust to weight upper stages, I suppose because I have more experience with the Saturn V. The Titan II is an entirely ridiculous beast, but it is, after all, an ICBM. So. That thing is like 5 minutes to orbit, whereas this is even longer. Didn't know if that was possible, but clearly it was and is. Even longer from launch to orbit than the Saturn V, which is about 15 minutes. And this thing is already past 15 minutes, and we're not in orbit yet. Might be 16, 17, 18 minutes. Okay, so falling again, so I've pitched down sufficiently. Minus 4 meters per second. You don't need to optimize that super close to zero. It's just good to observe what's going on. But if your vertical speed is at zero, you're kind of holding your altitude. So one of your two orbital parameters, either your AP or your PE, will end up being the altitude you're currently at. So let's say you want to achieve exactly a 300 kilometer orbit, 300 by something orbit. So if you can, if 300 is the lower number, let's say you're trying to achieve 300 by 1,000, then getting up to 300 and holding at 300 is a really easy way to make sure that in that single run, single burn without doing any corrections, you're going to be at 300 by something orbit. It's usually nicest to complete your orbit at the lower of the two values you want, because then again you're burning less of your fuel higher up. Because if I want let's say a 200 by 300 orbit, I could get up to 300 kilometer and then burn till to my low side. My PE is 200, but if I'd done the opposite, I would have had more fuel left over because I would have burned more of my fuel at a lower altitude. Not huge amounts, but they're definitely noticeable. And if you've got low margin missions, it's worth knowing what's going on with that. Geez, 17 minutes to orbit. Okay, so we're leveling off again. We're nearly there. So I'm not going to have that critical 3,100 or 3,300 meters per second of delta V I'd like for a clean TLI, but it is what it is. I'm not a perfect pilot by any means, every single time, by any stretch of the imagination. That's what you write programs to do this for, and I don't want to automate one of the things that I enjoy the most of Kerbal Space Program. All right, so see, this is even start to approach to zero, so is my orbit, and there we go, I'm sort of in orbit now, and pretty shortly I will, There we go. It knows I'm in orbit. Don't remember when it causes that. I always use the auto camera, I think, and that you're approaching orbit when the camera does that. There we go. Orbit of 120, 30. I just want it to be similar to my current one. Let's say 200 will be fine. And done. All right. Thanks for watching me reach orbit in just over 50 minutes. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.